is based off my mom's story because she grew up in St. Petersburg, and in the summer she would vacation in Ukraine because that's where my grandmother's from. And when Chernobyl happened, she wasn't allowed to go back. The reason why she was upset about it, because she didn't understand the whole situation, she was really young, was because he had a crush on the milkman, and she was upset she wouldn't get to see him. So I took the idea of the milkman and this nuclear kind of environment to make nuclear family and make this kind of isolated, whimsical, nuclear apocalyptic story. For my 2D portfolio, I designed all the characters, the environment, the world, and then for my 3D portfolio, I modeled all of those things. So I was able to use images from my 2D portfolio in my 3D portfolio as props. And I actually have the entire PDF from AP, the college report that I downloaded right when I got my score 3 years ago. So I have exactly like what I typed in, and I have exactly what I submitted. So to start off, I had my imaginary friend, which was based off of the ornaments you hang on like the tree during New Year's in Russia. And I made him in Blender, and that was my first model ever done in Blender. And I used Nomad Sculpt on my iPad. And the biggest question I had when I was doing 3D modeling for my AP3D portfolio was, how do I label the height and width? And it's just about what height it is in the 3D modeling software, and that's what you can put height, width, and depth. So this was for my sustained investigation. I also modeled this kind of deer with 2 heads in Nomad as well. I think that was my second 3D model ever. Painted it in Nomad Sculpt as well. And then I think I rendered it out in Blender, maybe, or it was only in Nomad. Next one, I included my design page and process page for the milkman. So I had all the silhouettes, the color ideas, the different kind of expression pieces. And this was my first time doing digital painting, so I learned a lot from that. I did a Nomad Sculpt of my milkman, just a bust, because I was not about to tackle hands and a body. I just decided to make the bow, mirror it halfway. I didn't do any fancy texturing because I did not know how to do that, and this 3D modeling gets really heavy, like the file size, and I didn't know how to make it smaller. So this was the first head I ever sculpted, and it was a challenge. Next one was like the milk jugs and the milk containers. I had the idea if milk became radioactive and became like a lantern, so kind of a milk cart that was turned into a lantern for the milkman because he doesn't have electricity, you know, in this apocalyptic landscape. I also just did the little milk cartons and put them in a little glowing thing. I think this was one of my last pieces. I was getting tired, but I had all these pieces already, so like 1 or 2 pieces can be a little bit less intensive, you know. I made a little dining room set because I had designed the interior in my other portfolio, so I could just model out a little table and a little cloth on top. And I just used like a PNG for the flowers and positioned it to the camera, so I didn't have to model that. And I downloaded textures online. I think you can reference like what materials, outside materials you used in some part of the portfolio. Yeah. Then I did a little car. This was hard for me at the time. I had no idea how to model the interior and exterior of a car. I like struggled so hard with this, and I think this was like me transitioning to Blender after working in Nomad Sculpt. So take baby steps if you're doing a new skill for your portfolio. Like do a little bit, do a little more, and then, you know, you'll learn something along the way. And I had a lot more intricacies in my design on my 2D portfolio, but I just could not execute on them. But I think because it was a different material, AP understood that it was like a little bit more challenging than like a sculpture or something. Like they could see that I put effort and I cared, and I think they reward you for that. And then I had a little design process page, and I had house, which was very hard for me to model as well. Looking back at it, wow, it's simple, but as my first like model, yeah, that was hard for me. And then I made the second house design because I don't remember which one I took as my favorite, but I made a digital painting of this house as well in the exact same composition. And I think I painted over this 3D model like I did with my final landscape. Also, great thing about 3D modeling, when you have different shots, you can reuse objects from each one. So I'll show later one piece, my final piece I think, is me combining all my 3D models. So it's not actually me creating a new piece. Since I have these 3D models, I can just put them in one thing, reset the lighting, and I have a whole new piece. Plants with the neon river, and then this was the one where I combined my Nomad Sculpt, my Bulby Imaginary Friend Sculpt, and then the Environment Sculpt I did, and I combined them into one piece, if you need to. And I also positioned the Nomad Sculpt of the milkman super conveniently so I don't have to see the bottom of his body, because I was not going to sculpt the bottom of the body for this scene. And so I have my whole little spiel here too, so I'll just put that on screen for a bit. It's pretty fun. I I'm not going to even reread it because I think it was fine. And I was referencing like each piece I was talking about so they can see exactly what I'm talking about in my response. And then my sustained investigation, I did these at the beginning of the year before the rest of my portfolio because these can be anything. And these were physical sculptures. So I did this bird that I designed like a year ago. And it was really fun. I did paper mache. I like dyed the fake fur with chalk pastels. I hand sequined every sequin on there, and then I cut out felt feathers and I wrapped around string around the legs to have the design. I spent so much time on that thing, but it was so fun. It made me like love crafting. But it took way too long. Like I could not do this for my final. So for 3D, like physical ones, you have the view 1, view 2, so I can show like more details. And then I made my milkman physically. And this was a different design before I designed the final. And it was made out of polymer clay and felt and some sequins. And he could stand up on his own. I gave him to my friend, but I think he broke a finger, or 2 fingers. So he was very cute though. And I gave him little pink cheeks. And he was pale because he never sees the sun because it's an apocalypse. And he has a little milk jug. So this was really early on in my ideation of the whole thing. I had a little close-up of him. And then you can reuse pieces from your main one in your selected work. So I used one of my milkman head in my final. Pretty good. Kind of double dipping, but it's allowed. So that was my whole AP 3D portfolio. I think I got a 5 because I, again, had tons of process, lots of variation, but a very coherent narrative through the whole thing, and so have fun with it. You can get so much out of it. Like after my 3D portfolios, I learned how to do 3D modeling and I learned how to do 2D digital painting. And without my AP portfolios, I probably wouldn't have done either of those, and I wouldn't be doing my concept design major in college now. If you got your score back or you are waiting, do not stress. It does not matter what score you get. Just if you made the process fun for yourself, you're not gonna have any regrets. See you in the next vid. Bye.